If you were to say The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild is the greatest game of all time, I would make no argument, and depending on the day might even nod in agreement. There would be no suggestion of Persona 5, there would be no what about RDR2 or MGS3. I would at absolute worst, in my most disagreeable disposition, think about it for a real long time. Almost any hyperbolically positive statement made about Breath of the Wild is at least partially true. It's often praised for its non-linearity, staggering player freedom, and awe-inspiring open world, and all of that is absolutely wonderful, but the first thing that comes to mind when I think of the wildest Link is the extent to which he can interact with his world. He can cut down grass, fell any number of trees, or burn everything to the ground. This is all thanks to an extensive, typically fairly consistent physics engine. The way fire, wind, water, gravity, momentum, and weight play off of each other with or without the player's help is astounding. And you could spend your time any way you want to. Screwing around with what you can and cannot light on fire, using that fire to create an updraft, figuring out what can or can't be chopped, the conductivity of metal objects and how electricity affects water. I could go on and on forever, and people have. Just look up some of the innovations speedrunners have discovered. There's some genuinely mind-blowing stuff out there, and I think it speaks a lot to the quality of the game in general that new mechanics and exploits are constantly being stumbled upon even today, 4 years later. There are so many little things the game doesn't even tell you about, like shield surfing and whistle sprinting, how snowballs build up on themselves, and I'm sure a million other little tricks the devs packed in here, both intentional and unintentional.
No.
You could lose hours just cutting grass in a field by yourself like a lunatic, and you would be playing the game exactly as it's intended to be played. That lack of any kind of hand-holding whatsoever is another thing I hear praised fairly often, and I think now I mostly agree, but initially it really turned me away. You are given a short, useful tutorial, a nice little motivating cutscene, and a simple directive. However, you're also kind of just dropped in the middle of a section of the map and told to go figure it out. Eventually there is a full-on combat tutorial within a shrine, but that's all the way in Kakariko Village. By the time you get there, you likely know how to fight proficiently enough, or run away fast enough to survive. It's nice that it's there, but too little too late. The boy we started our journey in the shoes of has already become a traumatized man. Not that it's a bad thing, at all. I now realize it doesn't just benefit the game's opening to be so ambiguous, it sort of defines the whole thing. The sense of discovery, of loneliness, and wonder you get the first time you explore this world is all perfect the way it is. That isn't to say the whole game is perfect, maybe nothing is perfect, but it's certainly a masterpiece. There are few games so open-ended, so sandbox-like and non-restrictive. Breath of the Wild doesn't give a shit what you do, go fight the final boss immediately after the tutorial. People do it, it's a thing. Play as thoroughly and slowly as possible, get every memory, shrine, and as many other collectibles as you humanly can while soaking it all in like you're on vacation. Or just find a nice quiet spot to blow yourself up and call it a day. Choice is always yours. It isn't easy to assume where you'll go or what you'll do when the game sets you free. Maybe you follow that initial lead towards Impa and knowledge of the divine beasts, maybe you don't. Maybe you just take off and see how close you can get to that interesting thing in the distance. And on this horizon, what doesn't look interesting? The size of the traversable map and wild, fantastic variation from one environment to the next is unparalleled, and despite how cartoonish the art style is, this world still feels remarkably well realized. I don't think immersive is the correct word for this one, but everything just feels right. Sunsets look warm and stunning, which is how they're goddamn supposed to. Rain looks a lot like rain. Look how wet it is. And the wind on top of a scenic overlook is conveyed to me virtually so well that I believe it is a little chilly up there. I bet Link does need a jacket. That brings me to another aspect of the game I've always been impressed by. Not only is there a beautiful day-night cycle, not only is there weather that actually affects the terrain around you to the point where you can weaponize it against your enemies should you have the correct helmet, eat lightning, freakish goon. There's also the temperature of the environment to contend with, and sometimes it's more formidable than any foe. It can be so cold you freeze and die, so hot you pass out and die, so volcano you burst into flames and die. Maybe that doesn't sound like a big deal, but it makes you think about what clothing you need to equip, what food you have to cook, and whether Link would be more comfortable if you put a little fire here and just chilled out until the rain stops. That's just me. Understandable. It also makes you hunt animals, explore for rare ingredients, and try out different combinations because they sound like they might actually be tasty. Also just me. Understandable. The dishes Link cooks can sometimes have tons of game-breaking benefits, like giving you an extra full row of hearts, extra stamina ring, crazy attack or defense. It's kind of weird and kind of awesome how many problems one can solve in this game just by having cooked an exceptionally overpowered meal. But even if you find your Hylian culinary skills lacking, all hope is not lost. Clothes in this game are there for more than just aesthetics. Am I really worried about whether or not Link looks cool while fighting for his life? Yes, I am. But the benefits of a silly looking outfit far outweigh my concerns for Link's rep on the streets. You can find a clothing set to boost just about any ability and complement any playstyle. Want to go stealth? There's an entire outfit and an entire system just for that, including sneak attacks. You can distract enemies with items, and there's even a whole level built around it. Want to be an archer and just pop things in the face, slow motion with arrows? Good, me too, it's the best thing ever. Want to go full Rambo, sprint into the enemy and break weapons on their faces? Again, good, me too, it's the best thing ever. I should clarify, I don't know if I do love the frequency with which weapons break. I get that for this game, the way it is, it's an absolutely necessary mechanic, and it forces you to constantly engage with the world. It's beautiful. I love how as you defeat more enemies, they appear with stronger weapons, thus giving you the opportunity to power up by killing them and taking it. As I mentioned before, I love breaking them on enemies' faces, but I wish there were more unbreakable weapons, like the Master Sword. Not too many, just a few. And I do very much appreciate the amount of different weapon types and interesting alternative ways we can go about slaying the monsters Link seems to hate so passionately. But I kind of want to say combat, aside from being complex due to how many options we're given, is pretty basic. Despite that simplicity, dispatching your bestial foes can still be satisfying. Once you finally get the timing down to flurry rush a Lionel in slow-mo for the first time, or deflect a Guardian's death laser, you start to feel like perhaps it is you who is the true monster. Ah shit, never mind. It's not quite Breath of the Dark Souls, but there are some very challenging encounters despite the smaller number of traditional boss fights. As the game progresses, we don't just become more powerful because of our equipment, although that is a big deal. I found that out on Eventide Island. You don't just start being more successful in combat because of heart containers, most of what really changes is you. Yeah, you get more weapon slots and stronger, more durable weapons, but mostly, you the player become more resourceful, and hopefully more skilled. If this game is about any one thing, it's freedom. In any given encounter, I could use any of the weapons at my disposal, or literally none of them. Magnesis a heavy metal object and deliver a mollywop, bomb them to death, freeze them in time, or Cryonis just makes a big block of ice. I love how cleverly all these powers are applied, and I very much appreciate the thought that went into giving us a square and spherical bomb. In fact, some of these shrines, the broken up 120 dungeons hidden and not so hidden throughout the world, contain some of the best physics-based puzzles since Portal 2. Sometimes you just get those gyroscope motion control thingies with the 3 balls, and I swear to God, for the life of me, I can't get him to go in there. I don't know how— hey! Holy shit, it's over. Usually it's a complex, really fun puzzle that in one way or another tests your knowledge of the powers available to Link, or how a system within the game works. Occasionally it's a robot looking to die the honorable death of a warrior, and if you're very lucky, it's just a reward for having made it this far. The many shrines aren't our only replacement for the dungeons of old. There are also 4 optional divine beasts, which are gigantic, interesting-looking Zoids you can crawl around inside of. Okay, that was a real terrible explanation for the thing I'm trying to describe. All 4 were sufficiently large enough that by the time I was back out in the open world I missed it, but not so short that I felt disappointed. They're just like larger, more scenic versions of the shrines to a degree, only these end in neat boss fights and the gaining of a new glorious superpower. And thankfully, as each divine beast is cleared, you don't just gain a power from your long dead buddies, you also gain memories, which are kinda sorta most of the cutscenes in the game. Many can be found by exploring the map or as you visit each of the divine beasts in their respective gorgeous corners of the world. There are also a few present-day cutscenes, and there is kind of a story aside from the tragedy you slowly piece together from 100 years ago. It's never exactly a mystery what happened to Link and his friends. You know somehow everyone died, but seeing it all unfold the way we do is still very impactful. At the same time, I also kind of wish there were more cutscenes. Yes, it's really cool to find things on your own in the world, and you do gain some sort of agency from that, but I mean, just hold my hand a little bit, Nintendo. I don't want to be shackled down by story beats, and I know this game has 1,000,000,000% more voice acting than any previous Zelda. I just want more explicit narrative. What can I say? I'm a Metal Gear Solid fan. I love cutscenes.
And Japanese cartoons played some part in that?
They did.
I also had some other issues with things I've said nice stuff about, like weapon durability. It can be a bit much that my favorite sword is going to break if I fight that one moblin, and especially in the beginning of the game, it can disincentivize my engaging in combat at all. There's a tough balance there, and I get that. Just feels like we're on the less generous side of it. But never mind those incredibly small downsides, there is far, far more than enough elsewhere to make up for it. The music alone does it for me. Have you ever really listened to Mipha's theme or the Rito Village daytime tune? My only complaint there is that we didn't get more. In total, after over 200-something hours of my life spent climbing these orange Ubisoft towers, shield surfing, and cutting grass like a lunatic, I have no problem saying Breath of the Wild is one of my favorite games of all time. In this playthrough, I finished every shrine, collected every memory, and explored everything I could. I spent an unreasonable amount of time admiring Goron Village at night, Zora's Domain during an endless rainstorm, and every single sunset I was fortunate enough to witness. Going forward, I have nothing but hope and perhaps unreasonable expectations for what the sequel is going to look like. I'm very interested to see what new powers they come up with and how we can apply them in puzzles and combat, but mostly puzzles. I'm hoping in the next one we can finally go underwater, maybe sail and visit some new islands, get a few more unbreakable weapons, or rework the durability system completely. I guess if I really think about it, there's a lot I would ask for in a Dream sequel, but whatever we get, and whatever the next game is, I'm probably going to love it. If anything, I'm just afraid whatever they make in the future won't be able to live up to the insanely high bar Breath of the Wild set. No game is perfect, but it's rare that anything so precisely nails exactly what it seems like it's trying to be. Despite the amount of time I spent slowly walking around this world, soaking in every little moment I could, I really never wanted it to end. I'm still not sick of it at all, I sort of just want to go back. Even after watching the secret ending scene, I still didn't feel a sense of actual closure. It felt to me like Link and Zelda were just getting started.
I'm surprised to admit it, but I can accept that.
It wasn't bad, and I'm not complaining. I truly loved everything, including the ending. It's just pretty jarring the way it cuts to credits. What comes after is beautiful, and it's in no way abrupt or unearned, but it also doesn't feel like enough. That goes tenfold for those of us who at least initially finished the game without having acquired all those memories. I don't want to sound like I'm insulting it, it's just an impossible feeling to convey through a video. I guess it would be kind of like I was starting to make a point that sounded important, and then out of nowhere, right in the middle of my sentence,